Come on. I mean, that's what most people wish. Couldn't we have skipped this whole thing? Answer no. Have to face it.
Which goes to the core of your belief that America should use its power to knock off bad regimes wherever they see them.
Yes, because our existence is incompatible with those. Not on a moral crusade, so to say.
At some point, they will overtake us.
We've always found out that in the end, we cannot coexist with psychopathic, aggressive, expansionist, totalitarian regimes. We've usually waited to see if we could do this with anything short of war, and it's got worse because it's been postponed.
So whether it's Nazism or communism, in the end, you have to
and if we'd done this to Saddam Hussein in 1991, we would be living in a better world. We just wouldn't know it, because we wouldn't know how much worse it would have been putting it off.
But did you think Saddam Hussein per se was a threat? Or just simply was a guy who was on a human rights record, was a tyrant and deserved to be overthrown because he engaged in his own version of genocide?
Well, the case for that would be complete on its own terms for any country that had signed, as we have done, the Genocide Convention, which mandates intervention either to prevent or punish genocide. Yeah, that would be complete on its own terms, but he'd invaded two of his neighbors. One of them not even invaded, had occupied, taken over, annexed.
Kuwait, and it was kicked out of Kuwait. And Iran, and that war was over. That war was over, and he was in a weakened state.
Restless pursuit of programs of weapons of mass destruction, and a detail often overlooked, the personal paymaster and armorer of the suicide bombers among the Palestinians.
Well, he gave gifts of $25,000 to families of suicide bombers.
Undermining the al-Fatah PLO leadership, supporting everywhere he could the most extreme jihadists and fundamentalists. People think he had nothing to do with jihadism. He had everything to do with jihadism. Financing the man who murdered Leon Klinghoffer, when arrested, Abu Abbas, when detained by the Italian police, had to be let go. Remember?
Yes.
Why was he let go?
I don't know.
It's pretty odd. The guy just hijacked the Achille Lauro and rolled an old man's wheelchair off.
Why was he let go?
Because he was travelling on an Iraqi diplomatic passport.
Clearly,
diplomatic passport.
I don't want to. Okay. Because of time. I mean, are you clearly arguing that the president, who now says there was no link between? Let me just stay with the idea, because everybody will email me on this point.
I bet they will.
You're not suggesting that there was a link between Saddam and 9/11, which is a different issue, are you?
I know that the man who blew up the World Trade Center, who mixed the explosives for the 93 bombing.
Yes. You mean you know him personally because you've talked to him?
No, I knew him. I know that man went straight when released by our brilliant FBI.
Right.
After being detained on bail. Yeah. Went straight to Iraq, which is a very hard country to get into. Just as then it was a very hard country to get out of, and was kept under Saddam Hussein's hospitality ever afterwards. I'm in favour of making the worst assumption about Saddam Hussein at all times, but I know more than anyone else about any direct connection with him and 9/11. Between him and Al-Qaeda, there's a lot of overlap.
Tenet and whose book you reviewed, I want to come to that in a moment. Well, hold off on that for a second. But the president and almost everybody else stepped forward and said there was no 9/11 Saddam link.
Well, they were not arguing against anyone.
And most of the commissions coming out say that when in fact there was contact between, say, Saddam and perhaps Al-Qaeda, but there wasn't any collaboration. You're suggesting something different?
I make 2 points. One, we know of very direct operational collaboration between Iraq and, oddly enough, the Al-Qaeda affiliate in the Philippines, the Abu Sayyaf group, directly supported by the Iraqi embassy in Manila. What has Iraq got to do with the foreign policy of the Philippines? Why are they interested in trying to create a separate Muslim state in the archipelago? Why are they one of the oldest causes of Al-Qaeda? I don't know. As for the connection with the main branch, we know they flirted with each other. We know they admired and praised each other. We know they both said they had a common enemy. My view would be that's as far as it's ever going to go. We're not going to wait to find out the rest. That's enough. Goodbye. We are not. There isn't. That is the closest. That is the closest to the Iraqi government. When Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, not our friends, were throwing out people with Al Qaeda connections after 9/11, Iraq was inviting them in. Iraq was inviting them in. You want to take that chance?
But as you as you dismissed them, a whole series of American presidents considered both of them, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, our friend.
Mm-hmm. So much more for them. These people were inside our defense perimeter, and the Pakistanis were the patrons of the Taliban. The Taliban is another name for Pakistani colonization of Afghanistan, and they were the incubators of al-Qaeda. And they had al-Qaeda sympathizers in their nuclear program.
And you think...
And the CIA knew nothing about it. The CIA knew nothing about it.
Before I turn to this book, two of your best friends are Ian McEwan and Martin Amis, correct?
Yes, I'm proud to say, yeah.
I am, so am I.
Ian is the dedicatee of this book.
I understand that. Do they share different points of view on this that are with respect to the Iraqi war that you have?
The position they take on the Iraq war is one of disappointment. I mean by that to say that they were with me in hoping that it would be a success, and in believing that it was justified. I don't think they would have gone as far as I did in saying it was also necessary and inevitable, but they would have both do say it was justified. And they are distressed, as many of America's friends from afar are, by the unbelievable sabotage of Iraqi society that has been undertaken by the parties of God in order that the society be destroyed rather than allowed a chance at federalism, secularism, or democracy. And that they do understand is the real problem. They're very clear about jihadism being the main enemy, both of them.
Tony Blair leaves government.
Yes.
Are you sad about that?
Very, yeah. I think it's a great loss. And unfortunately...
After 10 years, by the way.
It will be 10 years, I think today, or May Day, very recent, this week. I wanted him to stay on till he'd at least outlived Mrs. Thatcher in power, her record.
How long was she there, 10, 11?
I think it was nearly 14.
Was it really?
Yeah, amazing. And unfortunately, it's his own fault. He set his own timetable, and once he announced that he wouldn't complete a term, another term, he changed the subject not from whether you're going to retire to when. So he could never get any peace from this question, and there was no other topic of conversation. His fault, pity.
This book is called God is Not Great. God is in small letter, then larger is not, and then great is at the center. Subtitle, How Religion Poisons Everything. Clearly, by God, you mean any God, not any particular religious God, any particular faith. Any God is
yes,
not
any
great.
Surrender of
the
reason.
idea of any surrender, any belief, any faith in a God
credulity
poisons everything.
Yeah, credulity, superstition, the building of altars and idols, the worship of non-existent entities, the attempt to derive morality from the supernatural. All of that is more, I think, than mistaken or irritating. It's becoming actually very menacing now. The people who think they have permission of that sort from the heavens are trying to kill us. Or sometimes more mildly insisting that our children be taught nonsense in schools, or telling us that AIDS may be bad in Africa but condoms are much worse, or stem cell research shouldn't be done. But wherever you turn, if you find this barbaric foe, you'll find that this person is giving himself religious permission. Yeah.
Well, do you find it interesting that if you just take those who believe deeply in a God are more likely to be, in your judgment, militaristic?
I don't want militaristic, but I think they'd have to be fanatical. I'll tell you why I say this. Because I think you yourself are a person of faith of some kind. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be that, but if I thought that there was a personal savior of a divine kind who was interested in my creation and followed my life and cared about it and would redeem me and give me an eternity in paradise, if I only obeyed a few simple rules, I would think it would make me very happy. I mean, it would be a source of infinite contentment to me. It doesn't seem
for lots of people it does, though.
I dare say it does. But
I don't think most people live in fear. They live in love with respect to God.
Well, I would like to think that too, but you couldn't prove it by me, because the way I meet them is they come to me and say, I can't be happy until you believe it too.
Well, yeah, that's part
and
of it.
I'm not going to teach my children about the virgin birth. I want your children to. Now, I'm sorry, now it's not a division of opinion. Yeah. It's gone beyond that. We can argue about whether virgin births are a good thing or whether they would prove that someone so born had better opinions, more believable opinions, which of course it doesn't. But that's an interesting argument. I could have it all night. I really thoroughly enjoy it. We should do it more often. But they won't leave me alone. They won't. And that makes me nervous because